Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a good one for you. As always, on the show today, we keep you updated with the latest going on in Gaza as Israel destroys Gaza's last university, as Netanyahu has doubled down on the rejection of a Palestinian state. We'll save that kind of the best one there for last, or the one you kind of most want to sink your teeth into. But we also give you an update about everything you need to know with regard to the elections. Tim Scott has officially dropped out and is endorsing Donald Trump. And we'll also just take a little bit of a peek into the American mind right now, how they're feeling about the election. And if you're an American, you probably know exactly how that segment is going to go. But first, we will be starting with Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, and specifically not the genocide he's aiding and abetting in the Gaza Strip, but his really kind of deal with the devil, aka the House Republican Party, on immigration in exchange for Ukraine aid. So let's get the picture here from, and yes, we went back to them, the New York Times here. The soaring number of people crossing into the United States from Mexico has been a political vulnerability from President Biden for the past 3 years, chipping away at his approval rating and opening him up to new political attacks. But now, the crisis is threatening to upend America's support for the war in Ukraine, throwing the centerpiece of Biden's foreign policy into jeopardy. So after just the first really few paragraphs here, you could already see how the New York Times is beginning to take this into a Republican-type framing here. Just stating as a fact, it has been a political vulnerability for President Biden, something that, exactly what Republicans would, like to hear when there hasn't been any sort of major evidence. They don't cite any poll. They don't cite any sort of real research. They just cite, essentially the vibes of the fact that people are saying, and we're getting a really good, strong sense that it's starting to become a political problem. And you start to ask, oh, wait, who's saying those things? Oh, it's Republicans. And, this is really, liberals are right about everything when it comes to media analysis. But it is definitely true that stories that start on Fox News, they get bigger and bigger on Fox News and conservative media. Mainstream media feels like they have to address them, has to, respond to them, and, because the conservatives saying them, and they don't want to be called, the liberal media. And it really then just comes down to, all of a sudden, the mainstream media is talking about it and has legitimacy in liberal circles, and liberals start to go, oh no, that's a problem. Biden really should do something about that. Don't want to let things get out of hand with, the immigrants. We definitely have a crisis on our border when, again, there's no evidence of people responding to it in that way. I mean, there is, with the continual sending up of migrants to the kind of blue cities that Greg Abbott has been doing. It's an increasing problem, and I think it is has turned out to be an incredibly smart move for Greg Abbott to do those things, which is trying to, force it on, ostensibly left-wing mayors like, Brandon Johnson even have said, we have a real problem here. And, they know that I'm not honestly too much aware about how much power governors have over the situation to, authorize new housing. But the person that has the most, responsibility to do something on this is going to be Joe Biden. But Joe Biden is just so politically weak, does not have the ability to get his priorities through any major, source of, just overcome any major legislative obstacle to say, okay, here is where we're going to house these people, temporarily. We're going to give them, help them, with jobs and actually help people getting settled into the country. And, just in some way try and reform this immigration process, or at least put some sort of, stopgap measure. And again, if he wants to, he probably could even go, if they want to play dirty, if Greg Abbott wants to play dirty and have it, relatively fly under the radar, but still affect, in terms of the broader national conversation, but still affect a lot of these blue cities, then if you're Joe Biden, you could just send in money to these cities, whether it be New York, Chicago. I'm not entirely sure where else they're sending them, but New York and Chicago, I think they try to send some to like Martha's Vineyard or whatever. And you could just be like, hey, Joe Biden, I'm going to send some money towards you guys directly to be spent on this through, some sort of executive order, some sort of, care pack. It is definitely something that can be done if there is will there, in terms of getting, whether it be, a state of emergency or something like that, to be declared in the state. Each, whether it be Illinois or New York, like there is definitely, it is really for lack of trying that Biden is in this situation. And so what has happened here is there really has been an expert job of trying to manufacture a crisis on the border, and really Greg Abbott forcing this issue on blue states. And when they say, through that process and through the media, osmosis process that I mentioned earlier, it starts to become a big issue, and people like the New York Times pick it up, and then the Republicans are able to use it as leverage in negotiations as they do here. But you can already see, this frame here it's been chipping away into his approval rating and opening him up to new political attacks. Like, I don't think that is true. But now the crisis threatens to upend America's support for the war in Ukraine, throwing the centerpiece of Biden's foreign policy into jeopardy. That is right. Biden is prepared to give the Republicans what they want on immigration in exchange for more support for Ukraine, because we can't let them go down. We can't let them fail. We can't let them falter. They have to take over all of Russia or something. I don't know, whatever the maximalist, aims for Ukraine is at this point. After a meeting with Mr. Biden at the White House on Wednesday, Speaker Mike Johnson insisted that a Republican-led House would not pass legislation to send aid to Ukraine unless Democrats agreed to sweeping new restrictions at the U.S.-Mexico border. And even if the two sides do come to some sort of agreement, many Republicans, especially in the House, would loathe to give an election year win to Biden on an issue that has given them a powerful line of criticism toward the White House. And by the way, if you want to piss off especially young people, if you want to piss off the exact same parts of the Democratic base that have been really loathing Biden over Gaza, if you want to piss them off just a little bit more by making a deal with Republicans for support to Ukraine, which is something that not really many people are motivated over, but people are way more, especially at this point with Ukraine being 2-3 years old, people are way more motivated on immigration. Say you're going to give a big win to the Trump Republicans on immigration in exchange for Ukraine. I feel like that politically would be a liability for both sides. I think the New York Times makes a good point about why it would be bad for Republicans as well. So, yeah, it is just a really, really bad deal, I think, for both sides on this. It is just, there is no way anyone is really, truly happy, I think, at all, no matter what. So, Mike Johnson can get punished one way, Biden's going to get punished the other way, and we'll see essentially who it is. And I think there is, I think it's two things going on here with Biden and wanting to do this. He definitely thinks it's a big part of his legacy, and just like any selfish politician are going to, put people in harm's way for the sake of their own legacy. This was something Obama was kind of a specialist at, but also really, again, all politicians. But it is also, just this, as Biden says here, they view it as a step back on the global stage. And if Biden's responsible for that step back, it's going to be a big, big deal. But again, I just don't think, at this moment, there is any evidence that Ukraine is a motivating issue for anyone. And, maybe immigration is not that much of an unfortunately motivating issue either. But especially when you're trying to juxtapose yourself to Trump saying, I just caved and gave Mike Johnson everything that he wanted on immigration, is really, really not going to look good, and especially with the people who are already pissed at you. And you do need young people to win. But young people were huge for Biden and his coalition, which was not a, very big majority of the coalition in the last time around. So, again, there's this constant liberal scolding of, you're just irrelevant, young, leftist, whatever. But when or if things go bad for them in November, it'll be all our faults. All right. Speaking of November, though, it's looking pretty rough. President Biden is cruising to the Democratic nomination. Former President Donald J. Trump could wrap up his party's nod within days. America's response, and honestly, finally the New York Times is covering this here. This can't be real. Even as both men stroll towards likely summer coronations and a fall rematch, an undercurrent, and by the way, I call this from jump, from like 2021, even as both men strolled towards likely summer coronations and a fall rematch, an undercurrent of disbelief is coursing through the country. Many Republicans view Biden as so politically and physically weak that they think his party will replace him. And by the way, that's most normal people. It's not just Republicans. It's most normal people. They're just like, how? Again, it's me. It's like, how is the Democratic Party calling itself a sophisticated, real political party, a real political entity, and putting out someone like Joe Biden, who, despite it all, is incredibly, incredibly old, to run in a race like this? It does not make any sense. The incredulity, ranging, of course, Trump has his indictments. So let's put that into perspective as well. This incredulity ranging from casual doubtfulness to conspiratorial denial has lurked beneath a year of polling showing a deeply gloomy public mood as emerged in dozens of interviews over the past 2 weeks. It's like, if you're going to vote, you want to vote for the future, and you're asked to vote for Joe Biden a second time. It just, again, even he was the most perfect president ever, and did not piss anybody off, it would be a very, very big swing. So this is David Lag, I don't know. He said they'll pull a switcheroo at the last minute. He's a Republican missionary from Spring Hill, Iowa. They've tried about every other dirty trick. Paige Leary of Exeter, New Hampshire, who voted for Biden in 2020 and for Democrats in previous presidential elections, also questioned whether Trump would be the Republican nominee. The jury's out. The denial here is just so real. And I think really the place, my message to you guys today, with this story and with this real just despair and, just disbelief that this is our current political situation. These are our options. And, all I have to say is just wake up. They are our options. This is what we have. This is what we're going to have. I've been saying it since 2021. I thought Biden would win. Now I think Trump's going to win. But this is what we have. This is the state of our political parties. They are both constitutionally incapable of offering Americans anything, beyond slightly different, one slightly less bad than the other versions of the status quo. And just, again, staving off a little bit less destruction and decline each and every time. And again, I think the key is recognizing the reality, coming to grips with reality. But the question is, what will the American polity do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and supporting Newsflash. We now have a brand new way for you to be heard if you want, whether a text message or a audio message. Please, no video messages. I really just do not think that's necessary. We have a new feedback box open for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially open. SWRN702@gmail.com. Send a text message. Send a voice message of no more than 30 seconds via the voice memos function. Either of those two options, and we will 100%, not going to find this guarantee anywhere else. We're going to play it on the show, listen to what you have to say, and it literally could be about anything. Well, if it's inappropriate, we won't play it, but it could be about anything. Thank you so much. This is my thank you to all the listeners who have stuck out with us and want to have their own voice in the show. SWRN702@gmail.com is the address. All right, so we now turn the page a little bit to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and we start with your just general, Mondo Weiss has a great write-up of all things that have been happening in the last 24 hours, so let's get into it. Israel has continued to wage a merciless campaign of destruction in Gaza, killing scores of Palestinians in the past day and wiping out civilian institutions off the map. The Israeli-engineered telecommunications blackout is in the decimated Palestinian territory, continued for the 8th day in a row. Again, this is as we miss out on seeing the, reported, there's some kind of trickling out reports of some really, really horrific massacres. Now that they know there is really no communication for, more than a week. That really shows that there is, they feel like they have free reign in there. And I think that the pulling out of the troops and the announcement that, we're pulling out the troops was almost a, precursor to almost get people's guards down a little bit to get to the point where they could do this. A compound for housed and medical staff at the that housed medical staff at the International Rescue Committee and the Medical Aid for Palestinians group in Khan Yunis was damaged by a missile strike on Thursday. The IRC reported displacing them and affecting their ability to work at Nasser Hospital as Israel moves into the vicinity of that hospital. More journalists were killed. Wael Fanuna, the manager of Al-Quds Today TV channel, and Ahmad al-Dura, the brother of Muhammad al-Dura, who was killed by Israeli forces in 2000, when he was 12 years old, became one of the enduring images of the Second Intifada. This was the boy who was killed in his father's arms, an absolutely really horrific moment, and today his brother was killed in this war. The Ministry of Health in Gaza reported on Friday that Israel had killed 142 Palestinians and injured 278 more in the span of 24 hours, bringing the toll since October 7th to 24,762 killed and 62,108 wounded. Meanwhile, shocking footage circulated this week of Israeli forces detonating Al-Isra University on Wednesday, destroying the last remaining university. 20-plus universities destroyed on the Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupiers, through these actions, aim to propagate a culture of ignorance, keeping our people away from the march of knowledge and civilization, and forcibly displacing intellectuals outside of Palestine, the university said in a statement. Really, again, and we saw that, IDF shithead being like, this is why there is no education in Gaza. And then just, blowing up on, a school a few weeks ago. This is exactly right. This is what they're trying to do. This is how they, view and try to dehumanize the Palestinians. And I've seen some, really horrific, racist, frankly, just reports and tweets about, the Palestinians have some mental, just cognitively underdeveloped IQ. It's just like, is it them or is it the people who bomb all their schools and hospitals that are the truly, just inhumane, just creatures who are doing this stuff? I don't know. You tell me. I'm open to any interpretation of that. Meanwhile, even as the Israeli army claimed to have raised Hamas's main weapons manufacturing locations, Palestinian factions reported ongoing fighting with Israeli ground forces from northern to southern Gaza, including Jabalia, Gaza City, Bani Suhelia, Absan, and Khan Yunis. So, again, up and down the strip. Israel has reported the death of another soldier on Friday, raising the official toll to 194 soldiers since the beginning of its ground invasion in Gaza. The army, meanwhile, confirmed to NBC that its forces have been digging up graves and seizing bodies in Gaza, claiming that it did so to look for dead hostages. That is, again, this is the excuse that they're giving to the world at this point. We talked about this on the last show, just the complete emptying of graves, and again, seizing bodies. It's just, you don't get any lower. You don't get any, more disrespectful of the basic humanity with the Palestinians than that. And apparently they're getting their fifis hurt. In some combat units, according to Haaretz, the number of soldiers who have pulled out due to mental issues is higher than or equal to the number of soldiers who are wounded in battle. I mean, maybe, committing a genocide does have that effect on you after all. At the humanitarian level, organizations continue to raise the alarm about the calamitous situation facing Palestinians in Gaza. Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, armed clashes were reported between the Israeli forces and Palestinians in Tulkarem and Nur Sham's refugee camp, as well as in the vicinity of the Jalameh checkpoint. Israeli forces reportedly retreated from the Tulkarem refugee camp after 45 hours, one of the longest raids in the West Bank since October 7th, leaving behind widespread destruction. Again, the 10 billionth report of Israel blocking ambulances from reaching wounded Palestinians. And apparently Israeli forces tied the legs of one of the Palestinian men, identified as Abdul Rahman Othman, with a rope and dragged him on the ground. In a sign of how undeniably the situation in the occupied West Bank has evolved, the BBC reported on the killing of 7 Palestinians, including 4 brothers early this month, compiling evidence from witnesses and paramedics corroborating the men were neither armed nor constituting a threat when an Israeli airstrike killed them. So again, essentially turning the level of safety for West Bank Palestinians into an equivalent level of safety as those in the north of Gaza. Despite growing international outrage and continued calls for a ceasefire within Israel, but very small calls from mostly the families of the hostages. Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu remains steadfastly committed to opposing the establishment of a Palestinian state, implying that he said he was the only thing standing between Israelis and the two-state solution, which, as we know, a majority of Israelis, especially after October 7th, do not support. The Palestinian PA presidency responded to Netanyahu's latest comments, saying it confirmed that this Israeli government is determined to push the entire region into the abyss. So again, the PA just continuing there to be useless. The entire region is, again, on the verge of a volcanic eruption. And this is, some people who have sat there playing along as that volcano has gained more and more steam. The lava fills to the top, and they're just, shoveling it in there, essentially. Netanyahu's comments, though, which fly in the face of the U.S. stated goals for the region, have also garnered criticism within Israel, where some news outlets have called him delusional. In an interview that aired, interestingly, on Israel's Channel 12 on Thursday night, War Cabinet Minister and former Israeli Army Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot said he didn't believe Israel's leadership was telling the public the truth. Whoever speaks about the absolute defeat of Hamas is not speaking the truth, Eisenkot said. Today, the situation in the Gaza Strip is such the goals of the war had not yet been achieved. And I'm sure they made some progress. They've definitely killed, some major Hamas fighters, but there are we're talking about reported incidents, reported clashes between the IDF and Hamas up and down the Gaza Strip, including areas where they said they had operational control over the area a long, long, long time ago. But yet these strikes and these attacks keep happening. And Jabalia, for example, is literally one of the most northern places. Beit Lahaya, Beit Hanun, pretty well destroyed. But Jabalia, to the north of Gaza City, is absolutely a place where they thought they were completely controlling, for a long time ago. And it is, still a place where we're seeing continued crashes. Again, clashes up and down the Gaza Strip, all the way down from Jabalia in the north to Khan Yunis in the south. Even within Netanyahu's own Likud party, a growing number of members are allegedly planning for a future with the embattled premier, whose corruption trial has resumed since December, at its helm. Meanwhile, Eisenkot added that he and his fellow war cabinet member Benny Gantz thwarted the government plans to strike Lebanese Hezbollah in the early days of the war, likely averting an immediate regional escalation. And I think you could see that Hezbollah has been pretty clear that they do not want to get the situation to a full war, because the only people who do that, who want that, are the psychos in the Netanyahu, the really, not even the entire Israeli government, but the real psychos in the Netanyahu war cabinet, like Gallant and such, and Ben-Gvir and people like that. Or I know Ben-Gvir is not in the war cabinet, but those type of people in the government, the real hardcore people, were really the only ones because they wanted to stay in power politically. They wanted, their position, the coalition, and in the majority secured. Meanwhile, Israel remains committed to discriminating against Palestinians on every level. Israel's parliament, the Knesset, extended a ban preventing Palestinian prisoners from Gaza from meeting with their lawyers for an additional 4 months. The country's much decried mass distribution of guns to civilians, meanwhile, has unsurprisingly been revealed not to extend to Palestinian citizens of Israel, which is kind of funny, even if their communities are closer to zones of conflict than other Jewish majority municipalities. Because let's be real here, this is not the state for the Palestinian citizens of Israel. It's a state for the Jews. Anyway, really remarkable moment yesterday from Joe Biden, admitting Thursday that Washington strikes were unlikely to deter the Yemeni group, but showed no signs of stopping that strategy. Here, let's see if we can get a video. So this is Biden outside of the White House.
Are the airstrikes in Yemen working?
Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
So it's like, it's like, when you say working, well, what do you mean by that? Accomplishing the goals that we set out? No, but we're going to keep doing them. Just a rare kind of almost welcome moment of honesty there from the president. Meanwhile, Egypt is reportedly holding talks with Ansar Allah and Iran in a bid to de-escalate tensions in the Red Sea, as the international community fears London and Washington are already worsening in an already volatile situation in the Middle East, which is pretty interesting, pretty remarkable. because you see Europe, you see there's people who are not going to be so affected by what's going on in the Red Sea, and if they can almost convince the Yemeni the Houthis to not target their ships, people in Europe, people in France, they're not people. Germany has obviously played a role because Germany is Germany, but good portions of Europe, the Chinese as well, the Russians have been just pretty much all of the other major countries in the world, other than just the pathetic lapjob Britain and the big honcho here with us in the U.S. They know that this is going to be an incredibly escalatory, unnecessarily so move, and it's something that they are showing now that they do not want any part of. After the umpteenth report that Biden is growing frustrated with Netanyahu, The Guardian revealed on Thursday that the U.S. has for years used special mechanisms to shield Israel from U.S. human rights laws, even as other allies, military units who receive U.S. support, including sources say Ukraine, have privately been sanctioned and face consequences for committing human rights violations. But we just have that special relationship. So Pat Leahy, which is who was the namesake of the Leahy Law, which aims to prevent U.S. complicity in foreign militaries' human rights violations, he told the British newspaper that he has seen his legacy repeatedly flouted by successive U.S. governments when it came to Israel. The law has not been applied consistently, and he says what we had seen in the West Bank and Gaza is a stark example of that. In the EU, Parliament members adopted a resolution on Thursday calling for a permanent ceasefire and resumption of diplomatic efforts to establish a Palestinian state. Mexico and Chile have meanwhile called for the ICC to investigate Israel over war crimes committed in Gaza. The Financial Times has reported that unnamed Arab states are working on a ceasefire proposal that would guarantee the release of Israeli hostages and further normalization between Tel Aviv and Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, in exchange for irreversible steps towards a Palestinian state, which is, again, a really problematic idea because in really a lot of places, especially throughout Palestine, MBS is not a popular figure, and having him take some sort of leadership role in resolving this conflict, and especially if it means some sort of, replacing Jordan as the patron governor of the Palestinians, is not going to be a popular move with, the Palestinians, because as we found out, it is not good to cut them out of the situation, to say the least. So, how about this? Benjamin Netanyahu, we heard a little bit of his speech throughout this just report there from Monowise, but he also had this to say in his speech to the Israeli media. Notice it's in Hebrew, but there is a translation provided by I-24.
For 30 years, I am very consistent, and I'm saying something very simple. This conflict is not on the lack of a state of Palestinian, but the existence of a state, the Jewish state. Every area that we evacuate, we receive terrible terror against that. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, and also Judea and Samaria, which we did it. And therefore, I clarify that in any other arrangement, in the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea. This is what happens when you have sovereign.
Oh, look at that. It didn't finish.
For 30
we may
years,
as well play it out. Yeah, wait, hold on. Wait. Okay. Let's rewind that back. Netanyahu talking to the Israeli media, talking about how important it is to really control everything.
Any other arrangement. In the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea. This is
look at that. From the river to the sea. Benjamin Netanyahu, just some remarkable stuff there. And we've seen some, just some cope from some kind of Israeli journalists, even some kind of liberal Zionists who have been equally as kind of rabid in terms of denouncing that from the Palestinian side. Because, again, if you look at the actual history of it, the place where the Palestinian activists got the term "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" is actually from the 1988 Likud manifesto, which says there shall be Israeli sovereignty from the river to the sea. And, look what Netanyahu says next year.
What happens when you have sovereignty? This truth I say to our American friends, and I also stopped the attempt to impose us a reality that will jeopardize us. A prime minister in Israel has to be able to say no, even to the best of friends. To say no when you need to, and to say yes when you can.
Yeah, so there you have it. Netanyahu essentially coming out and admitting to the Israeli people, and also kind of going into campaign mode with his base because of the political trouble that he is in. He's admitting the whole game. He's saying this is what Israel wants to do. We're going to control everything. We need to have sovereignty because it is an issue of national security. We need to have sovereignty from the river to sea. We have to wipe them all out. And that is it's clear as day. Sovereignty is, again, the Palestinians don't say, because it's an important distinction, because sovereignty means complete control and for Israel, for the Jewish state, complete control. There's no sovereignty in the chance, or use of the word sovereignty in the chance that we see on, the streets of the Western world, and college students and people like Rashid Tlaib are using. Like, it's a call for equal rights for Palestinians from the river to the sea. I think the use of the term sovereignty there is so telling, and the fact that he told it to the American government and they've said nothing. He is saying it to us now. The question is, will we listen and will we remember what he said? That he has said this out in the open. Will we remember and will we listen and respond differently? That is the big question there, that we will continue to watch, and again, only time will tell. All right, that's all we got for you guys today. It's been Newsflash. Thank you so much.